one is too small of a number to achieve greatness. And the moment that you understand that the people that you have around you, they're either your number one asset, or to be honest with you, they can be your number one liability. But the moment that you understand that and begin to value people, I think that is what creates the connection. Don't you think you know when a person values you and when a person doesn't value you? And so I think that giving value to people and expressing that to them is the common ground that builds relationships. I always look at somebody and I ask them, tell me about your greatest failure. And the reason I ask that is because I think that the character of a person comes out of their failures, not out of their success. And I think that the bedrock part of foundation of leadership is character, and you build on it.
I think the deck is stacked against everyone to some degree because life is very difficult and we all die. So, but some people do have it harder than others. And all of us have it very hard at some times in our lives. It's like, well, what's the alternative? You take responsibility for that and try to struggle uphill, because the alternative makes everything worse. It's not like it's fair. I know perfectly well that people have brutal lives. I've been a psychotherapist for 20 years. I've seen things you can't imagine, horror shows that you can't fathom, and people who have been hurt in so many ways, so many dimensions. It's like, bitter? Should they be bitter? Should they be resentful? Should they become violent? These things don't help. They have to struggle uphill despite their excess burden. And it's responsibility, not guilt. It's not necessarily their fault. That's not the point.
You can't pour from an empty cup, and before you give love to anybody else, you have to truly love yourself. And I think the easiest way to love yourself as a man is to be proud of yourself. And to be proud of yourself, you have to decide who you want to be inside of the metaverse, inside of the matrix. You have to decide the character you want to be and try your best to achieve it. I think that most people failing in life know very well they're failing. And it doesn't matter what avatar you decide to absorb or who you decide to be. You can decide to be it, and true in your heart if you're giving 100% of your energy towards becoming it or not. It doesn't matter if you want to become a famous musician, doesn't matter if you want to become a bodybuilder, doesn't matter if you want to become a pro fighter, doesn't matter what you want to be. You know in your heart if you're actually trying or not. You have to decide what you want to be and try and become it. And a lot of the people who are genuinely unhappy or miserable in their hearts know they're not trying that hard. I think the world would be a terrible place if everyone had a free mind. You do need the slave minds.
I've heard you say that.
As annoying as they are, you do need the slave minds. You do need the guy who believes that working in the gas station is important and he's good at it. You need him. The world can't all be, mansions in the Palm and Dubai. They can't all be that. So successful is all about self-definition, which is what I was saying at the beginning. You have to decide who you want to be. And if you wanted to be Joe Schmo and you pull it off, then you'll be a pretty happy, content person. To decide who you want to be. I think the people who are miserable, it's the gap between their expectations and their reality. That's where the misery lies. Yeah. My expectations were always enormously high. Even when I was a nobody, I knew I had to be filthy rich.
Because at some point, somebody's going to have to give you feedback. At some point, you have to give somebody else feedback. Like, self-assessment is a thing, but it's not the only thing. It's a thing. It's a data point. And I'm a huge believer in self-assessment, but you have to have that buttressed with the assessments of others, because we are blind very often. We're social animals. We cannot do this thing called career or life alone. We're just not that smart. We're not that strong. We're not that aware. We're just not that good. As social animals, we actually need each other to watch our backs and tell us what's working and what's not working. And I think for somebody who goes through life and reads those books, all the books, I get good on them, I guess, but are they asking for help? Are they asking for insight from others, as opposed to just reading it and agreeing with it and thinking they're making the changes? We don't build trust by offering help. We build trust by asking for it, because it's a vulnerable thing to ask for help. Will you help me is a very, very vulnerable statement. Can I help you? Not so much. An act of service. But the act of service really comes from allowing somebody else to serve you, which it becomes this whole weird, twisted, circular thing.
When somebody relinquishes all power and accountability, there are two quotes that spring right into my mind. One is the famous swordsman Miyamoto Musashi, who said something along these lines: reality cannot be altered. You can either bow to it or be destroyed by it. So you must face reality, or it will wreck you. So people who are perpetually anxious and say, I cannot fix it, everyone else is the problem, you are ignoring reality and will be destroyed by it. Choosing to accept reality that you are the one enabling the people who are hurting you, and in fact, you are the bad partner in many of your relationships, going back to that a moment ago. Absolutely crucial. And here's the second piece, and the second quote is the famous public speaker and comedian Mitch Hedberg said, "Alcoholism is the only disease you can be yelled at for having." And that's because at some point, in order to move past it and heal from it, you must accept responsibility for the choices you make. Will you have temptations? Will you have challenges? Is it possible there are components that are difficult to control or perhaps beyond your control in the wrong circumstances? Yes, there could be. And an anxious attachment, it's been programmed into your nervous system. It will take a long time to fully overcome through those secure relationships. But you must take responsibility for your choices. You must identify bad circumstances where you are liable to be love bombed and then accept the love bombing. Every conflict must have a consequence. Same with your behavior. Every relapse must have a change, a lesson you should learn and refine.
Holding ourselves accountable, for our actions, just really being responsible, right? Like not putting the blame on somebody else, not making excuses when we fall short, but just owning it, right? Saying, listen, if that means apologizing to somebody else and say, listen, I'm sorry, I messed up, that's what we have to do, because what I was sharing was, when we make up excuses, when we do like a Adam and a Eve in the garden, when we make up excuses, if we're not careful, for one, God is going to deal with us and there's going to be consequences to those actions. But if we are not holding ourselves accountable for those actions or being responsible about them or taking responsibility for them, what happens a lot of times is we will repeat those same actions. We will do those same things, over and over again. And how many know there's some things that we can do that can cause us to die spiritually and also can cause us to die physically. And when you look at the day and time that we're in, a lot of things that we see go on, whether that's in the world, whether that's in the church, whether that's in our personal lives, whether that's on the job, anytime you find people that are not willing to take responsibility for their actions, especially when their actions have negatively affected other people, it's just never good.
In life in general, it's so easy to not see beyond your own nose, like what's immediately in front of you, and you just lose the big picture on what's out there and where you're going. I really like that passage from Romans, though. And I think the punchline is it's never comfortable to be in the crucible. Right? And to have those trials by fire and pressure, but it makes you a stronger person across the board, whether it's spiritually or physically. So living in the crucible and appreciating it for what it is. With anything in life, you need to have a plan, right? Just sliding through your day and not having direction or knowing when you walk in the door exactly what you're going to do. I don't know. I don't feel a sense of accomplishment if I don't have a plan. So it doesn't need to be like super structured, like you and I are going to do, X of this or Y of that. It's just, these are the things that I'm going to hit on, and I'm not going to walk out the door until they're done.
One of the best feelings in the entire world is the feeling of getting better at the things that you're interested in. If you're starting to get into the gym, it feels really good to actually see yourself getting stronger, whether that's visually or the fact that you can bench more pounds. Getting stronger and hitting new records is at least half the fun, if not all the fun, of going to the gym. If you're a piano player and you've been practicing your improvisational skills, it feels really good to be able to just make a banger of a melody in like 5 minutes. It feels good to walk around life with a certain level of competence. You've put in the work, you're better at certain things than most people. Competence makes you more useful to yourself, to your family, to your community, and it kind of makes the world a better place if you think about it. But if you've spent pretty much any time on the internet whatsoever, you've probably noticed that there's a culture that sees self-improvement as its own standalone hobby, detached from any particular interest or goal, and it's used almost like a widely prescribed antidote for a crappy life. You feeling down in the dumps? Try self-improvement.